that people should enjoy parts of Torah which they enjoy. Some people like Iyun, some people like Girsa, some people like Novi, and so on. And some people just like random interesting topics, and it's hard to find a sefer that will catch your interest all the time, but we try to make that as well. So we have a series of shiurim, which we call the animal shiurim, which the point of the shiur is to take any animal and discuss what the Torah says about that animal. Some animals, we learn halachas from them. Some animals, we learn halachas how to treat them. And some animals, the discussion is what the Chazal say about them in different places where they come up in the Gemara. And some animals, the point of the shiur is to identify what the actual animal is. So this shiur is about the Tachash, as you can see. The picture on the screen is of a unicorn, because most people say that the Tachash is a unicorn. However, we're going to go through the sugya and we'll see that there are different opinions about it, what it is, and what exactly a Tachash is. So, the first thing is the place where in Tanakh where it says Tachash is in Parshas Truma. Torah talks about the Truma the Yidden brought to build the Mishkan, and it said over there, "V'zeis haTruma asher tikchu meitam zav v'kesef u'nechoishes u'tcheles v'argomet v'teila shoni v'sheish v'izim v'oiros elim v'adamim v'oiros tchashim v'atzei shitim." There are different opinions of how to count these the trumas that the Yidden gave. There's also different opinions what's more chashuv, what's less chashuv. The pashtus zav is the most chashuv, but then kesef is lower. But then it says at the end oiris tchashim. Some say that was more chashuv. Either way, oiris tchashim, the leather, the skins of the tachash, were used in the Mishkan for covering the Mishkan. So what is this tachash? So, like I said, most people say unicorn, but first just to explain, in English there's something called a unicorn and something called a Pegasus, and a lot of Bachrim confuse the two, people that don't know. A unicorn is a horse-shaped animal that has a horn on its head. A unicorn means one. Uni means one, like united, it means one, and corn is a short abbreviation of the horn, so that's what it means, but there's no wings involved. A Pegasus is a mythical animal, which is also shaped like a horse, which has no horn, but it has wings. So some people make unicorn and they make make it with wings and a horn. Now, but pashtus today, we don't know of any horses which have horns, and we don't know any horses which have wings. So we don't have any unicorns or Pegasuses. So it's not really a practical nafkamina, but just to clarify, when you're talking about the two, so it's people mix them up, but they're two separate animals, akopanim, and the way in English the way that they're described. So in Chazal there are three major places where it discusses it: in the Talmud Bavli, in Talmud Yerushalmi, and the Medrash Tanchuma. And we're going to learn each one and we'll see what could come up. And then when we're done going through the sources in Chazal, we'll bring a discussion from the Maral Miprag about it. And then at the end is a good of the Sikh of the Rebbe as well. So in Talmud Bavli to Masech the Shabbos, Tav Chavches Amud Aleph and Amud Beis, over there the Gemara says, Tachash Shahaya B'Mei Moshe, Omer Rabbi Ila, Omer Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Omer Haya Rabbi Meir. That the Tachash Shahaya B'Mei Moshe, Berio B'Fnei Atzma Haya. It was a creature for itself. V'lo Yichriu B'Chachamim Imin Chayahu Imin Behemohu. The Klal, we know in the kosher animals there are behemoths and chayas. Behemoths are cows, sheep, and goats. Chayas are deer and the relatives of the deer. And the nafkamina is that a behemoth, you do not have to do kisoy adam, but the chaylev is osir. A chaya, you have to do kisoy adam, but the chaylev is mutter. Those are the main nafkaminas. So Rabbi Meir says that the tachash was a creature for itself, but Chacham do not know if it was a behemoth or a chaya. Continues Rabbi Meir and he says, "V'keren achas hoisaloi b'mitzchay." It had one horn on its forehead, and then he adds, "Ulefishon is damaloi l'Moshe, v'also mimenu mishkan v'nignos." So here Rabbi Meir tells us three things about the tachash. Number one, he says we do not know if it's from the cattle family or from the chaya family. We do know that it had a keren, it had one horn on its forehead, and we also know that it was only there for the time being, for Moshe Rabbeinu's times. He made the Mishkan, and then it disappeared. It does not say over here that it was a miracle, it just said it happened for that time. There are animals that officially are extinct, that don't exist today, whether the dodo birds or the mammoths, different animals that l'chayr al piteva seem to exist, and yet they don't exist today, but it wasn't a miracle, they just got killed out. So here it doesn't say it was a miracle, it says it was in Damal of the Moshe. So most people learn the Gemara and they say here's a source taka that we have that there was a unicorn, because that's what the tachash was. It was an animal with a horn sticking out of its head. However, this picture, which people would usually use for a unicorn, is not precise. Because all we know from the Gemara was that it was a creature that had a horn sticking out of its head. But it can be, what kind of creature it was, you can use your imagination and find anything else. Unicorn means one corn, one horn. It doesn't have to mean that it was a horse with a horn. It can be anything. It can, if your imagination is really crazy, you can picture other things as well. The Nakuda is that it's an animal with one horn. That's all that we know from this Gemara, and we do not know if it was a behemoth or a chai. Then the Gemara continues, and the Gemara says, now we already have a new detail in the Gemara, and the Gemara says that we know that it was a kosher animal. So in that previous page, in the 3 pictures that we saw, none of them are really kosher. A horse is not kosher, a rhinoceros is not kosher, and also that last thing is probably not kosher too. So the Gemara says, but so it had to be a kosher animal. And then the Gemara says, what's my right that it has to be kosher? The Amar of Yehuda, Shoir shehikriv Adam Arishain, Keren achas hoisoloi. Adam Arishain brought a carbon to the Eibishter, he brought a shoir as a carbon. And that shoir had only one keren. B'mitzchayin, it's for it, Shenemar, V'titav Lashem, Mishoir par makrin. And the Gemara explained that it's one keren. So since it's one keren, so that's a right that it was a Torah animal. The Gemara then continues, if you're bringing a raya from Adam Rishon, that it was Tahor, V'lifshet minei demin behemoh. So maybe Eibazaya was also a behemoh, because a shoir is a behemoh, not a chay. And for the Gemara, Kevan the Ika Kedesh, demin chayahu, there's an animal called Kedesh, which is a chay, which the Gemara and Chulim will soon see discusses. V'leisli ela chada keren, and the Kedesh also only has one keren. So the Gemara says, Adam Arishon's behema, his shoir had one keren. But we have the Kedesh, which also only has one keren. They're both kosher, and they both have one horn. So the Tachash could have been related to the shoir with the one keren, and could have been related to the Kedesh with one keren. So the Gemara concludes, and the Gemara it's understood, that there are animals, that behemoths that have one keren, chayas that have one keren, and the Tachash is related to one of them, and we do not know which one. That's the Gemara in Shabbos. Then there's a Tosfos in Chulin. Tosfos has a question on this Gemara. Tosfos asks a question, Heichi diyik mid Rav Yehuda shoya Tachash toher. How did the Gemara know Tachash was a kosher animal? Because Adam Rishon brought a shoy that had one horn. Fragt Tosfos, V'alei kol oison sheyesh len keren achas einin shavin. There are many animals with one horn. You yourself in the Gemara said, Ta'ika kedesh shu chaya, v'shoir shu behema. So just like there's a kedesh which is a chaya and a shoir which is a behema, and they both have one keren and they're taka both tahirim, but they're different. So maybe there's a different creature which has one keren. This is actually a whale called a narwhal, which is a fish which has a horn. So we have such a mitzvah that you have the animal which is not kosher and it has one keren. So how did the Gemara assume just because it has one keren, how is that an automatic raya that it has to be a kosher animal? And for Tosfos, V'shloimar, the samech hamasnisin de basimin, the kol sheish lekranayim mishle tlafayim, umistama afilu bekeren achasaydi. The Gemara says, so Tachash says there's a Mishnah Nida, which the Mishnah says over there, that any animal which has horns also has split hooves. So B'meila, if it has horns and it has split hooves, it obviously has to be kosher. And therefore, the Gemara assumes that it has a keren. Even one keren has to have tlafayim, and a keraim and tlafayim together, so it must be that it was a kosher animal. Elamai, we weren't sure if it's a chay or a behemoth. So chewing their coat, not true. But this, we'll get to that in a moment, actually. But al kopanim, this is what Tosfos learns pshat.
Well, normally he has one horn and none of the
Huh?
Well, a narwhal has one horn, but none of the
Oh. Very good. So that's a tremendous question on this Mishnah and Masechta Nida. How can the Mishnah say Kol sheish lekarnayim mishle tlafayim, which implies that all animals with horns are kosher, if rhinoceroses don't have a horn and they're not kosher at all? About the fish, it's not so much of a shayla because it's not a land animal. But the land animals, you have rhinoceroses which have horns, only have one horn. And some of them have two horns, but many only have it's different species. And the ones that have one horn, so they don't have tlafayim, they don't have split hooves, and they're for sure not kosher. So there are 2 or 3 potential answers to this question. One answer is that when the Gemara said Kol Sheish Lekarnaim, the Gemara meant Rakim Yesh Le Simonim. If it has a simonim of chewing its cud, and then you see that it has a horn, then you can assume that it has tlafayim as well, and it's taka kosher. But if it doesn't have the other simonim, like the rhinoceros, doesn't chew its cud, then obviously just the fact that it has a horn doesn't mean anything. Another answer is that the rhinoceros's horn is lamata mimitzchoy. It's not on the top of his head; it's on its nose, further down. So when the Gemara said "Kol sheish lekeren yesh leklafayim," it's tafka regarding a keren sticking out on the top of its head, and over there, those animals, ataka, the family of deer, all the deer, gazelles, all those types of animals which have the antlers, those are taka all kosher because the karanaim come out of their head, yesh leklafayim as well. A third svara for an answer is that the horn of rhinoceroses are different than the horns of cattle. That the horn is not made out of bone, it's made out of something called keratin, which is similar to hair and fingernails. And the nafkamina is that if you cut off the rhinoceros's horn, it'll grow back. Just like when you cut off your hair or your nails, they grow back. So too over here, Mashenkin, if you cut the horn of a cow, of an ox, so it's not going to grow back because it's a bone, and a bone is broken off, it doesn't come back. Oh, the problem is that deer horns are taka keratin as well. That's why this answer doesn't make sense. Al Kolponim, that's what the Gemara, this is what we see from our Gemara Bavli, that we see that there's a Tachash, we don't know anything about it other than the fact that it has a horn and that it's kosher. Whether it's a behemoth or a chayav, the Gemara does not know, the Gemara just says that. In the Yerushalmi, there's a very not exciting taich. The Yerushalmi says, what's a Tachash? The Yerushalmi brings a few opinions. The first opinion of the Yerushalmi is Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Tainin, L'Shem Tzoyvei Nikra. It's a name of a color. Oires Tchashim, just like Oires Elim Ma'adamim. Oires Elim Ma'adamim means, Shalom Aleichem Meir, welcome back. So just like the skins of the Oires Elim as Ma'adamim means, Ma'adamim obviously means red, it's a color. So the Yerushalmi, Rabbi Yehuda says that also Tachash, Oires Tchashim means a color, it's a bluish color. And it's a tchelistic color. So B'meila, according to the Rabbi Yehuda, all chalemis and fantasies of seeing a unicorn, a tachash, don't exist, because a tachash is hachakal, the name of a color. Another less exciting pshat, not as least exciting as this one, but not as exciting as the first ones, is Rabbi Nechemia Eimer, glakatinin. A tachash is a glakatinin. What's a glakatinin? There is a sefer called the Musaf Ha'arich, which is from the Achreinim, and he says it's a min chulda yakara. It's a type of very expensive weasel. I'm sure everybody heard of mink before, right? There's mink coats, fur coats, mink fur. Mink, this is a type of weasel, which is called a mink. Another one is called a ermine, or ermine, and they're also similar, that their fur is very, very choshev, it's very good fur, it looks very nice. And b'meila, according to Rabbi Nechemia, that's the oirist choshev. And according to Rabbi Nechemia, so Nachamol, it's not as exciting as a unicorn, but it's not as boring as a color. It's an actual creature, which they used and they skinned and they used that. They had to obviously catch a whole bunch of them to make cover the whole Mishkan. 30 amas was a big deal. But Al Kobarim, this is according to Rabbi Nechemia, nothing to do with horns. According to Rabbi Nechemia, there's no reason to say there was ever something called a unicorn. It's a tachash, a type of weasel.
It doesn't have a horn.
According to Rabbi Nechemia, indeed a tachash has no horn. That was the shit of the Babli, Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Nechemia argues, he says, no, a tachash is not an animal with a horn. A tachash is a weasel. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's not even an animal. A tachash is a color. That was the Babli that we learned a moment ago. Rabbi Meir. A bluish color, the color we had before in the script. However, the Yerushalmi also brings the shit of Rabbi Meir. It's a type of chaya which is in the midbar. And then he says, weiter, Rabbi Elazar Berei, Rabbi Yesi, Rabbi Abahu Shem, Rabbi Shimon, Lakish, Rabbi Meir, Kimin chaya tahira, bara kadosh baruch hu lemesha b'midbar, kevan she'asa b'meleches hamishkan nignaza. Here already we have a lotion that it was a chaya tahira, not behema tahira. So chaya is more similar to deer horses. And also over here we have the Lashon in Yerushalmi that Barak Hadish Baruch Hu LaMoshe B'Midbar. And the Eibishter made a special miracle. He created especially for Moshe Rabbeinu in the Midbar. So it is an element of Ma'aseh Nisim that the Eibishter was involved to create it. But according to the Yerushalmi, to Rabbi Meir, it also doesn't exist today. Meaning, according to Rabbi Nechemia and Rabbi Yehuda before that, it's a color or a weasel. Then you can have Tachash today. So you go to a zoo, you see a weasel, you see a mink, so you just saw a Tachash. But according to Rabbi Meir, the Bavli and the Yerushalmi, it's the same Rabbi Meir that he says no, that you cannot find Tachash today. Tachash today does not exist. It was Nignaz. It doesn't exist anymore. Whether it's a behem or a chaya, so in the Bavli it's a suffix. In the Yerushalmi it seems to be Paisha that's kimin chaya tahira. Even though lav davka chaya here means chaya versus behema, but l'chayra that seems to be the pshat in the Yerushalmi.
You think that any animal that exists today can be
Rab Avon has another pshat of what the Tachash might be. He said, not might be. Rav Avon says another Amira. It might be Ravin. B'chlal in the Yerushalmi, a lot of names of the Amiroim are written differently. So Rabbi Avon could be Ravin in short. You have very often Kiyosah Ravin. So Kapanim, Rab Avon says Kedesh Hayashma. That what's the Tachash? The Tachash in modern Hebrew is a Kedesh. And in Chulin, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, what's a Kedesh? It's a Tavya Dibei Eloi. Tavya Dibei Eloi means, Tavya means a deer. Dibei Eloi means a huge, very, very tall deer. What we would call a giraffe. So according to Rabbi Avon, a Kedesh is a giraffe. A Tachash. A Kedesh is definitely a giraffe. That pretty much all the Mefarshim and Gechulin accept that Tavya Dibei Eloi means a giraffe. But according to Rabbi Avon, Kedesh and Tachash is the same thing. So we have another pirush that a Tachash is an animal that exists today. Again, not a unicorn, it's only a Kedesh. However, the Maram Shif says that you could still be metavech Rabbi Avon and Rabbi Meir and say that even according to Rabbi Avon that it's a giraffe, it's still Keren Achas. Why? Because a giraffe has one, as you see, a Keren Achas miyuteres, it has one extra horn sticking out, so the back two are regular horns, but the one in middle, that's a Keren Achas miyuteres, which some giraffes have, which that could be mekasher the two pirushim. For sure, Rabbi Avon does not agree with Rabbi Meir, because Rabbi Avon said that it's a kedesh, which is a giraffe, which we have today. Rabbi Meir said the tachash is an animal which has a horn, which does not exist today. It's not around today. So obviously it cannot be the same animal. But Akopanim in the prat about a keren, which the Bavli was marich in it, in that prat, Rabbi Avon could agree that the tachash has a keren. According to Rabbi Nechemia, that it's a weasel. I don't think any weasels have any kind of horns. So according to Rabbi Nechemia, he for sure argues with Rabbi Meir about the keren part. But according to Rabbi Avon, we can at least put them together in this prat. So that's what the Yerushalmi says. Then we have the Medrash Tanchuma on Parshas Truma, where the pasuk brings Eretz Chashim, and he brings a few other opinions. The Truma, so the Medrash says it's a machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and Nechemia. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Chayo Tahira Gedoyla Hoisa Bamidbar. In the Yerushalmi, Rabbi Yehuda said it's a color, but in the Medrash Tanchuma, Rabbi Yehuda says it was a very big Chayo. The Keren Achas Hoisa B'Mitzcha, and it had one horn. Ube'oira Shisha Gvanim. And its skin, there were 6 colors. And they took that animal and they skinned it, and that's what they used to cover the Mishkan. So in this picture, the colors look the way they are. But obviously, if you think about it, a giraffe could have also 6 colors. Just the giraffe, all the patterns that it has. It's not just it's 2 colors, yellow, and then the inside is black. There's brown, whitish over there. There's a whole bunch of different shades of color, which also might be counted as Shisha Gvanim. But it's more exciting to say that it's colors that we don't know of, maybe the rainbow colors, 6 colors that were there. I don't know which one would not be included, but there's Rabbi Yehuda tells us weiter that it was a big chaya, and it had a keren, and he adds the prat that it had the 6 different colors. Meaning, it's understood from the Chumash already that Eretz Chashim is a nicely colored skin. Something nice colored. So the Yerushalmi said it's a nice color. Tzachakol, they dyed it the color blue. According to Rabbi Nechemia, it's a weasel which has the color which we see. We know that mink fur is a chashuv kind of fur. But according to Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda over here, that it's a random chaya, so what kind of special skin does it have? So he tells us it had 6 colors, but gave us what those colors were and how the pattern looked. We have no idea if it was zebra style, giraffe style, or Holstein cow style with patches. We can't wissen because he doesn't say more pratim. And according to Rabbi Meir, we're never going to see it again because it's nignaza. And by Tchias HaMesim, I don't even know if we're going to have Tchashim then either, because what's the point in we don't, the lav dafke, but pashas, animals do not have Tchias HaMesim. That's pretty much accepted by everybody. So lav dafke will know, unless we'll ask the Chevra that were there then, and ask them to tell us how it looked exactly. We'll show them all the fancy pictures that we have of crazy animals, and they'll choose what looks the nicest. Akoponim, Rabbi Nechemia says in Medrash Tanchuma, Maise Nisim Hoysa. This is, we said in Yerushalmi as well, but the Medrash Tanchuma says it clearly. Uleshasha Nivres, Babasha Nignaza. V'ayres Tchashim Lama. So he points out something very interesting, Rabbi Nechemia, in the Medrash. He says, it says in the Pasuk, Ayre Chayiriyo Ha'achas, Shloishim Ba'ama. The skin was 30 amas long. Where can you find one skin that's 30 amas long? So Rabbi Nechemia seems to imply that it was one piece of skin that was so long it was 30 amas. 30 amas is very, very big. Yeah, how much is that in feet? Who can tell us? 45 feet better. So an animal that's 45 feet big is pretty big. It's even bigger than a giraffe. It's actually something very, very huge. You skin it all around from top to bottom and back and forth. Has to be 4 amas wide. That's how long the ideas were. So it's a big deal. But this is in the other Iris Elim, which were rams, over there Rabbi Nechemia doesn't say it was one long piece of skin. And a ram, which is basically which is a sheep, that you don't have such huge sheep. But for some reason, Rabbi Nechemia teaches over here that it was a long one piece of skin, so it had to be some kind of huge creature. How did they capture it? But the Chaldeans in those times were powerful. They were somewhere 10 amas tall, but still, they captured these huge animals that were, Rabbi Nechemia points out, there was also a mice and nisim, and after they finished it, after they finished using it for the Mishkan, afterwards, nignaza.
What does nignaza mean?
It was buried and disappeared forever. What do you say? In the Midbar, that's where they built the Mishkan. Yeah, that's where they found the Tachash. So then we have a kasha the Maharal on this whole pshat of Rabbi Meir and Nechemia. All those that say that we didn't have the Tachash later. The Tachash was only a one-time thing. The question is from a pasuk in Yecheskel, where the pasuk says, "Val bishech rikmo ve'en olech Tachash ve'ech b'shech b'sheish ve'achasech meshi." The Eibush is telling the Yidden, I clothed you berikma with embroidered garments, and olech tachash, I gave you shoes of tachash to wear, and then I wound fine linen about your head and dressed you. And since this, the Eibush is taking care of the Yidden in the Midbar. So here it's mashma that there was tachash, that the tachash was used for shoes as well. So what exactly does it mean that it's unicorn shoes? What's pshat that they had in Mishkan that the Yidden were wearing unicorn and na'alaim shel tachash? What's na'alaim shel tachash? What's the pshat over here exactly? And the chayra was only for the Mishkan. According to that Pirush, that it was a miracle. So then where did they have other ones tachash?
What's the question? What's the question? It could be anything. It just goes back to the other argument. Anything to use any of the animals.
Okay, but according to the Bavli, it was for sure it was a one-time thing, and afterwards disappeared. So according to the Bavli, this is the question. You want to answer the question with other opinions, but those opinions that say that Ataka disappeared afterwards, what are they going to answer? The Psikta says, "V'rolich tachash, elu eiris hamishkan k'mashakasav azisa mechse la'oyel, eiris elim adamim u'michse eiris tchashim elamayla." I'm not sure exactly what I'm sorry, no. Here we see in the Psikta, that the Pasuk compares the two types of Tachash. The Pasuk says, and Olech Tachash, the Na'alaim of Tachash is Taka the Mishkan. But according to the Medrash Psikta Rabasi, and Olech Tachash doesn't mean actual shoes, that they had unicorn shoes or Kapanim Tachash shoes. And Olech Tachash is all Remozim. The Eibush is telling the Yidden how I took care of you over there, and I just like Na'alayim, just like shoes are like an external thing, not really Pnimi. So do the Riyas HaMishkan were Chitzayni, they weren't Mashal Pnimi. But that's a Medrash, that's not the Pshat in the Pasuk. Pshat Shalmikah, there was actual shoes. So the Maral's answer is that there were many Tchashim B'mei Moshe. It says that it was only Eibishter created for the Mishkan. So it says the Maharal, Harbi Hoyu Lima'oid. Velation Nivra Asora Davke. There were 10 Oiris of Tchashim, so Hashem created 10 Tchashim and then they all died right away. Actually, Hoyu Harbi. And even though it says Maise Nisim in the Shah Nivra, the Shah Niglaza, it doesn't mean that it was only for Shah Achas. It was only for one time that Hashem sent us a whole herd or flock of these Tchashim, of these unicorns. And then the Yidden captured a whole bunch of them, and they had whatever they needed for the Mishkan. And they didn't need more, so the extra skins they used for shoes. And those shoes are the ones Shalei Balu Min Odim Shalei Mal Raglei. That's a famous passage in last week's parsha. That Ragel Chalei Vatseika, because they had the same shoes forever. So I'm sorry. The way Tachash said that they had these shoes on their feet all for 40 years. These were the shoes from the areas of Tchashim, which the pasuk says, and Olech Tachash. Another Tachash, which the Rebbe brings, is that it might be a Tachash Acher. The Rebbe says we have many things in Tanakh which have different pirushim, different meaning. And the Rebbe says, look, the Sikhat Chelek Al Nadal, the Rebbe talks about it, that it could be that there was a different Tachash. One Tachash was used for the Oiris of the Mishkan, and the second Tachash was used for Na'alayim, for somebody who used it as a skin for shoes. Another question that the Maharal asks is, why was it not counted bebehemis v'chayas tahiris? We saw in the Gemara Babli, the Babli said that it was a kosher animal. And we know that in this week's Parasha today, in Parasha Shmini, the Torah lists us all the kosher animals, and we know there are only 3 kosher behemoths, 7 kosher chayas. So why isn't the Tachash counted? According to Rabbi Ovon, that it's a Kaddish, so a Kaddish might be one of the Pirushim in this week's Parasha as well, but according to the other Pirushim, that it was a random animal that only existed then, so why doesn't it, and it's not what we have today, why was it not counted? So the Maharal answers Taka, one reason, because there's only the Shah Isa. It was for that little moment it came and it disappeared. So the Eibishter didn't write it in the Torah because it wasn't necessary, it wasn't a thing for the Deiros. A second answer is that maybe Taka, according to some opinions, it was a Behemoth Tmeya. And even though the Babli says it's the Torah, but according to the other Mefarshim, the other opinions, it could be that it was not a kosher animal, and that's why Taka wasn't counted. Afal B'chein, it was used for the Mishkan, because Hashem made a special exception for the rule to use it for the Mishkan. Ad kan.